Good evening and welcome to the Marion Miner Cook Athenaeum. My name is Sarah Sandbar and I am one of the Ath Fellows here. It is said that all art is political. This statement has always made sense to me because politics is the art of dancing with power and there is power in art. There is no discipline that has the power to nurture and spark imagination, unleash creativity and innovation, break barriers, engage values, humanize, and make you feel like art can. It is because of this that art is one of the most powerful vehicles for social change that we have. Joining us tonight is Kelly Tsai, a dynamic writer, performer, and filmmaker who has used her talents to use the arts as leverage for social issues ranging from cultural identity, feminism, domestic violence prevention, and immigration reform. She has been noted as one of the 30 most influential Asian Americans under 30 and one of the top 40 New Yorkers who create positive social change. In 2016, she was honored as a Woman of Distinction by the American Association for University Women. She has performed at events that have featured thought leaders and entertainers like Gloria Steinem, Tyra Banks, and Drake. Her work as a performance poet has been featured at over 700 venues worldwide, including the White House, Lincoln Center, MTV Iggy, and now the CMC Athenaeum. As always, I must remind you that audio and visual recording is strictly prohibited. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Tsai.
Hello, okay. Hello, how's everybody feeling tonight? I need a little bit more. How's everyone feeling tonight? I know we're very dressed up, we're very formal, we're very fancy here at the Athenaeum, but you know, I'm kind of loose and silly and casual, so we're gonna kind of get a little different. Is everybody ready to get a little loose and silly and casual? Yes. And you all need it. You all need it. Don't act like you don't. I've been talking to you all day, stressed out. You're stressing me out. I was saying to the people of the workshop today, I was like, wow, you are my people. So intense, so many thoughts. How are we gonna fix all these things? I don't know, but we'll have some fun tonight and we'll figure it out. But once again, my name is Kelly Tsai, and I go through various voices throughout the course of the performance, as you will see. But I just wanna get us a little warm, a little loose, a little silly, a little casual. So when I say spoken, you all say word, spoken, word. Spoken, word. Spoken. When I say many, you say voices, many. Voices. Many. Voices. Many. Voices. When I say one, you say love, one. Love. One. Love. One. Love. Like you mean it, one. Love. Oh. Didn't you feel the vibration was so different? So awesome. Okay, good. But let's see. You know, I always come in with like a set of poems that I'm gonna do, and then I change it all. So we'll see what happens. But I'm gonna start off with a piece that I wrote a few years ago when I was doing a hip hop theater show. Me and my friends, we were doing this piece that was about race, gender, and the idea of the other in mainstream media. Yes, you've studied this, the idea of the other. Yes, the other. And I think that after a while, I feel like this dress has pockets, and suddenly I'm like, why, hello, I'm putting my hand in my pocket. Why am I doing that? But, you know, after a while, we spent months and months and months thinking about like all the ways that our lives were marginalized by mainstream culture, and it kind of made my brain explode, and I felt like, you know, for once, I would like to be the center of everything in the universe. So I wrote this piece instead. It's called Self-Centered. If I was the center of everything for a day, everything would be aimed towards, dictated by, catered to, tailored for 5'2" tattooed Asian females. When you turned on the television, no Martha Stewart, no Tom Brokaw, Katie Couric, or Stephen Colbert, just 5'2" tattooed Asian females giving makeup tips for the Asian eye. Instructions on how to raise children multilingually in America, advertisements for custom design builders who retrofit houses for the fabulously petite, news that tells of the latest community organizing campaigns, and where the hottest DJ set is for that night. Everything catered to me. All of the movies would tell the stories of wayward, liberated activist brainiac single girls and our loserish MC boyfriends, healing wounds with family members overseas while fighting for fair wages for factory workers around the world, which would be easy. since all of the governments would be run by 5'2" tattooed Asian females. We'd wave to the cameras enthusiastically, give out free sandwiches to the entire world every Wednesday. We'd match our lip gloss to our fair trade boots and throw a dance party every time we signed a truly revolutionary bill. And I'd get to ask people dumb questions all day. 'Cause isn't everybody a 5'2" tattooed Asian female? And isn't it so great to be us? But you know what? I might let you, non-5'2", non-tattooed, non-Asian, non-females, I might let you keep your languages. I might even give you equal access to education and healthcare too. I might even share the airwaves and our houses of government, give you a shot at working your way up in our financial institutions, because I know that there is no you without me. And from the only to the other, I guess there's no me without you. Everybody doing all right? Yes? Ooh. So how many people are into spoken word? Spoken word. We love spoken word. Hey, yes, give it up for spoken word. So I am like, I know I look so young, but I'm like way old school on spoken word tips. So it's interesting because I think for different people, spoken word means different things, and it really depends on at what point you came into the culture. But a little bit about my story. I came into spoken word because I had a high school English teacher who used to sneak us into the bars in Chicago to go watch the original poetry slams go down, which I don't know how I got that past my very strict immigrant parents, but somehow it happened, and here we are. But if you know, how many people have ever been to an actual poetry slam? Okay, so a good number of people. And so a lot of people are familiar with like Brave New Voices, right? Or Cup C, right? So this is a lot of what's happening. But the Poetry Slam, do you know this information? The Poetry Slam actually started in Chicago. Anyone from Chicago? Make some noise. Okay, right here. I like that in the back. Yes. I'm from Chicago, yes. It was started by a construction worker in Chicago named Mark Smith. This is back in the 80s, right? They used to do these sets over at this spot called the Get Me High Lounge in Wicker Park, so you can kind of catch the vibe on what was it like. But the story was told to me, Mark Smith started the Poetry Slam because he felt like people felt like they had to be, somehow pedigreed in order to understand poetry. Have you ever heard this? People are like, I like poetry, but I'm not always sure what it means. How can you like it if you don't know what it means, But he was he's trying to create a way to bring poetry back to the people and not make it this obscure thing, right? And actually, I was talking with somebody about it earlier today. Spoken word, when you really think about it, it's one of the oldest art forms on the earth. Every single one of our cultures, every single person in this room, every single one of our cultures has some kind of tradition of sung poetry, recited poetry. This was the original way people told stories to each other. And the reason why it was in rhyme was, you're doing these very long, stories to people, epic poems, and you're trying to keep people, along with the rhythm as well as makes it easier to remember, right? And so in a lot of ways you see like what happens, with hip hop MCs today is also from this lineage and this line, right? So we come from so many different places. Is everyone still with me? Yeah. Is this interesting? I hope so, yeah. So, in Chicago, when you say the name Mark Smith, everyone's supposed to say, so what? Mark Smith. So what? Mark Smith. So what? Mark Smith. Now you gotta put a little stank on it. Mark Smith. So what? Yes, this was the attitude. It's like, I don't care about your fancy degrees. I don't care how many books you've published. I don't care if you started the Poetry Slam. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you have to bring to the mic tonight. You won the slam last week? That's cute. What can you do tonight, right? And so this was the tradition that I grew up in. And actually, even upon reflection, the majority of the adults I watched performing at that time are older than I even am now, you know? So it definitely wasn't a youth-driven kind of thing. But I'll tell you, two of the people that I grew up watching who had a big impact on me. One of the people I grew up watching, her name was Mama Maria McRae. She was half Filipina, half black, and she had grown up in the rural Jim Crow South during segregation. She was also a Marine during the Vietnam War. It's like, have you ever heard a story like that before? I remember she had a beautiful, beautiful poem where she just talked about why don't people slow dance anymore? Like, what happened to that, you know? She was one of the people that I grew up watching. Another poet that I grew up watching was this guy named Kent Foreman, and he used to come up to the spot, like long trench coat. He literally would have a pipe. He would have a pipe with him, okay? This is real. I'm not making this up. I had to like go back on the interwebs. I'm like, really? Did Ken have a pipe? I was like, yep, Ken had a pipe. He would have like a pipe with him, had the hat on, you know? He was like very, very like out of jazz poetry tradition. He used to go to every venue and do this poem called Chicago, right? And one of my friends was like, Ken, why do you perform the same poem every single place that you go? And he said, I am trying to publish this into people's minds. And it worked, because we could all do that poem with him, and we knew all of the stanzas. So I just share these stories with you because, as I was saying to somebody earlier, the beautiful thing about culture is that it continues to change. And your participation in the culture is what helps it change and grow. But the thing that sometimes bums me out is it's really fast. A lot of people get forgotten along the way in the culture. So I share these stories of people who are important to me and who are a part of the culture that maybe is kind of invisible when people are looking at spoken word today. But, you know, we're all a part of the one big family, so I just want to kind of put us back in our rightful place, if that's all right. Okay, cool. More poems? Okay, cool. So this is a piece that I actually wrote, and again, I've been living in New York for a long time, so I'm talking about a lot about Chicago, but I'll stop very quickly. But this is a piece I wrote when I was back in Chicago. Very funny. My family is from Taiwan. My mom's family, Taiwanese in the house? Hey, yes, 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 enthusiastic Taiwanese people, yeah. Awesome. You know, there was a certain point in time where it's like I'd say like I'm from Taiwan, and people are like, I love Thai food. I'm like, that's great. That has nothing to do with me. I'm like, I also love Thai food. I think things are changing though. Things are changing, you know. But the thing is, so my mom is like a mainlander from China. Yeah, during the like communist revolution, people had to hightail it up out of there, and they went to Taiwan. That's my mom's side. My dad's side is like Taiwanese. Okay. So if the people who are Taiwanese in the room are like, oh, okay, you know, but I share this story because in Taiwan at that time, there's like not only beef, I mean, there was like war, all in out war between those communities, you know? And my mom always said like, you know, me and your dad wouldn't have got married if we stayed in Taiwan. But we figured we'd go to America and everyone would just think we were Chinese and then it would be fine. And she was right. So, due to American ignorance, you have me. So give it up for American ignorance. It brought about one good thing. Yes. Yes, making it happen. So growing up Asian American in the Midwest is like kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Okay, we got some Midwesterners like, yes, it's kind of weird, you know. It's like I would always look at Asians that grew up on the West Coast, and I'm like, you all are so existentially secure. You just have a swag, like, yes, I'm here. And, you know, in the Midwest, we're all like, yeah, we're all like angry and frustrated and, you know. But this is a piece that I wrote when I was in Chicago. At the time, I was working on the West Side, which is a predominantly black neighborhood, and and I was a teacher back then, or not exactly a teacher, but a youth worker. And one of my students at that time, she said, you know, Kelly, I'm glad that you work here because before I thought there were just black people and white people, but now I know there's black people, white people, and Chinese people. And I said, okay, this is good. You know, this is very good. This is how we begin, you know? And I was like the only Asian person that many, many people knew because of spoken word. Everywhere in that city, in that most segregated city in the country, was my home. So I traveled all across, north side, west side, south side, everywhere, because I always knew I could come home into spoken word, and that was like such a beautiful part of what my journey has been. But yeah, this piece is about growing up Asian American in the Midwest, and it's called Making Guacamole. Eating a guacamole taco at a taqueria in the West Side ghetto where I worked, I was suddenly sent back to the site of my sister at 12, kneeling at the kitchen counter of our parents' home. She sat scooping green slivers of avocado from out of their broken skins. Anxious and small, I would squeeze the round limes, put their juicy pulp to my tongue, plow my greedy little fingers through finely diced piles of tomatoes, onions, and peppers, hoping to be the one to mash them all together in the end. My sister and I were not trying to start a dialogue. We were not trying to be politically correct. We weren't trying to bridge the gap. Looking out the restaurant's windows, I see construction workers drill away in Ogden, reminding me that white folks usually don't come here unless they're drug users, missionaries, or doctors, soon cruising away seemingly undisturbed in their shiny cars. Some days I adopt the same look of suspicion and surprise when I see one of these outsiders walking awkwardly around the neighborhood. I wonder what they're doing here, glance at my own wrist, and realize the hypocrisy of my question, knowing that ever since I was small, I was supposed to have a color in America, which is neither black nor white. I'm not a chameleon, although sometimes I do think that I've tried to be. I'm struggling to reason what we have in common, what it could be worth, tearing away at ancient Asian histories to build the unified front of today's Asian American society. I dream of a cocky Asian nationalism when sisters wear chipaos and kimonos and our hair in those seriously funky, gravity-defying dues every single day. When we've taken all of our languages melded into one to recall us to our values and our pride. When we have a voting bloc and boycott power not to be screwed with. When our music saddled to the buck wild backs of Asian rhythms is blared out open street windows, when somebody could say, "Hey, quit acting so yellow," and we both understand what that could possibly mean, when we can belong to something and it can belong to us, when we are proud of our accents, knowing, yes, this is what American English sounds like too, when screaming out yellow and brown power could encompass all of the stories of war-torn refugees from Vietnam, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, of my parents who were lured here by the brain drain, of the Japanese Nisei and Issei in the American internment camps, of the Filipinos who first came to the dirty South in the mid-1700s, of the Chinese who drove the stakes into the railroads and worked alongside black sharecroppers in Mississippi, a nationalism with the weight of all of these things and more, marking the day when my family will quit saying American when we mean white, when we can chuck out our own sense of eternal foreignness, when we can envision the face of America as ourselves. But my life has never been that clear, that pure, that unwavering. Listening to hip hop, I press skip past the tracks of my identity is spun as ball-busting kung fu masters or stingy Korean grocery store owners. Having grown up in the suburbs, I wonder now which of my childhood friends realize that race consciousness isn't optional for everyone. I find the same values for family amongst Latinos, the same sense of guilt shared with Catholics and Jews, the same sense of insignificance shared with Native Americans and Arab Americans. If anyone were to ask me what is my community, it will be a complicated answer, coming from the lips of a child of immigrants who thought to simply exist in America was to succeed. Eating a guacamole taco at a taqueria in the West Side ghetto where I worked, I thought of my sister scooping and slicing vegetables. I thought of all of this. I thought of all that kids do when left to their own devices, how there were so few boundaries for us, how we found joy in it, how something as odd as two Taiwanese girls making guacamole in the Chicago suburbs during the mid-1980s tells the stories of the creeping of contacts and contexts, cultures and colors, finding homes in the foundations of our minds, creating the rituals of the community of us. Everybody doing all right? Yeah? Good. What direction are we going in? I do not know. Okay, I'm gonna do this. This is a brand new piece. I was just, growing music stand. I had the honor of performing at this event last week that was 1,200 community organizers from all across the country that converged on Washington, D.C. It was mostly women of color, mostly low-income women who are working on issues as diverse as criminal justice reform, equal pay, minimum wage, childcare, family leave. It's really moving to hear their stories, you know, whether that's a young woman who was trying to access abortion services in Texas to another woman who had escaped from El Salvador and was trying to resettle her family in the United States, to different people who've been trying to get fair workplace practices in order to take care of a sick family member. It was really moving to see not only people share the honesty and authenticity of what they were going through, but also to come together and connect and to create power and to speak truth to power in advance of the 2016 election. Because, as the organizers very smartly were saying that, you know, come election time, it's like, yeah, anything you want, you know. So they were like, now's the time to push as far as we can. Whether those promises get taken up or not, it will remain to be seen. But this is our time now to try to push for what we want to get ourselves on the agenda. So that organization is called We Won't Wait. So I hope you get a chance to check it out. But I wrote this piece for them, special for the summit last week. It's just called What Belongs to You. Please don't say this don't belong to you. Please don't say this don't belong to you. Sisters, some days it seems as though our magic has been stolen, poured into bottles and sold back to us, relabeled instant beauty, happiness, health, wealth, free shipping, free return, 60-day money-back guarantee, press to purchase complete. And that's what I've been wanting to feel. Complete. Like I can understand this life I've lived, like I can explain to a child with the authority I'm supposed to have as a woman, like I can look Goliath in the eye and just look at him. Like I can accept how what I've loved has been forgotten, what I've fought for has disappeared, who I've trusted, I just don't trust anymore. Please don't say this don't belong to you. But there's still so much more life to live, so much time to do something with. Why did the Creator make us so powerful if we don't know our power, if we fear our power, if we mistake our power, if we forsake our power? When healing a broken heart feels like a full-time job. Repeat, when healing a broken heart feels like a full-time job and you've already got 2 other gigs and a night shift. How do you calm what's inside? How do you take more in? Please don't say this don't belong to you. Clear away the rubbish. Shut down the volume on all that noise. Listen. Listen. Your body is yours. Your mind is yours. Your spirit is yours. Your love is yours. Your voice is yours. Your family is yours. Your time is yours. Your money is yours. Your safety is yours. Your peace is yours. Your block is yours. Your country is yours. Your vote is yours. Your power is yours. Please don't say this don't belong to you. Please don't say this don't belong to you. So I think you could probably, I had a wonderful conversation with all of us at the head table. Give it up for the head table over here. So fabulous, so intrepid. But we're having, great conversations just talking about writing and creativity. So make some noise if you got a little creative side to you. Make some noise, yeah? And I think it's so important. Whether you want to, do it professionally or not, it makes no difference. Creativity is a critical thing in our lives. And I know at CMC, a lot of people go into politics, government, finance. Is this correct? Law, those kinds of things. Other people are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing any of those things. Okay, But, when I meet different people, out in the world, out in that big nebulous adult world. I know you go to college and then you go off the cliff. It's adulthood. What happens in adulthood? The big secret is adults don't know either. Everyone's a mess. I'm like, so many times I'm like, wow, can't we just be a little more? No, okay, no, not more mature. That doesn't happen here. But what I really observe is that as you go on in life, there's so many people that used to do things, right? Like I used to write, I used to paint, I used to dance, I used to, And I know there's so many things, and I know here is a very hardcore environment, yes? And you can be convinced that you do not have the time. Make some noise if you feel maybe a little squeezed for time. They're like, it's stressing me out. I'm not going to think about it. Yeah. So you can feel like you're squeezed for time, but again, this sounds very meta. It's like, this is so eloquent. It's like really important, though. It was a build-up. That was the punchline. It's like really important, everybody, to be creative. But quite seriously, I think it's extremely important, and you all are the leaders. We kind of see where leadership is at in 2016, right? Let's make it a little better. Let's make it a little better for 2036, okay? So make some noise if you're willing to make leadership better for 2036. But that means you got to take care of yourself, You might go all out, no sleeping and, 5-hour energy, whatever that thing is called, drinking, all that, but you got to take care of yourself and you got to nurture your creative side. I don't know how I suddenly turned into your older sister / mother, but we'll just get back to some poems, but I feel quite serious about this. Okay, anyway, who's ready for another poem? Okay, yes. So, this is a poem that I had written about immigration. There's some conversation about immigration right now. Some of it's a little crazy. I'm like, I can't even, this is like a crazy talk, in terms of what's going on. But this is a piece that I wrote actually for an organization out in Seattle called One America that does a lot of great work around comprehensive immigration reform. So this piece is just called Crunching the Numbers. My father had many creation stories about why he came to America. Growing up, gazing out over the sea's edge, he longed to know what was on the other side. What immigrants have never lacked is motivation, enough to propel us halfway around the earth, away from family, language, culture, everything we've grown, in pursuit of the unknown, longing to know what is on the other side. Who has documented how many meals cooked, garments sewn, bricks laid, oranges picked, babies cooed to sleep, miles driven, floors scrubbed? Who has documented how many hours produced, contributions earned through the resilience of immigrant labor? Legalizing immigrants will be a drain on the economy, analysts say. Strange, since so many of their ancestors must have passed through the gates of Ellis Island, they themselves deemed uncivilized, unintelligent, poor. They themselves subject to hygienic screenings, literacy tests, religious persecution. They themselves something before they became American. All over the map of the United States, indigenous names still hold strong. Seattle, Chicago, Wichita, Tucson, Omaha, Milwaukee. Trace reminders of thousands of years of tribal history, while school kids today are still instructed to celebrate the myth of a first Thanksgiving. Those early settlers could have never foreseen our classrooms, myriad of tiny hands cutting and pasting paper turkeys, proud and gregarious, with names like Hongmei, Mahamadou, Prerana, Julio, Joaquin, our kids sketching images of cornucopia, never-ending bounty, sea to shining sea. Our country's forefathers could have never foreseen us. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Pen to the page, glow of the computer screen, the cursor blinks. Legislators flip through hundreds of pages of documents to foresee the future of 11 million Americans today, redefining borders, reuniting families, refining paths to citizenship, re-establishing asylum. We know the America that our lives are telling. Beyond soundbite rhetoric and numerical projections, beyond stadium rallies and internet fistfights, now is the time, a chance to rewrite our America, to foresee what can be on that other side. Everybody doing all right? Yes? So I know you all are a very intense crowd. Is this correct? Yes. I think that, in the workshop today, there's a couple people who are from the workshop. Yes, I see you. In the workshop today, I asked people to introduce themselves. One part of their introduction was one question that they have about the world. I realized I didn't share my question. And a question that I really have right now about the world is how much humanity can our choices afford? And I think about that, in terms of the conversation around immigration. A lot of times people are like, well, we can't afford to have, more people come here, or when we talk about business, we can't afford to have fair labor practices because of the bottom line. We can't afford, this is kind of a narrative that we're having. And even when I know that there's been different programming around sexual assault prevention and all of these things. It's like, can you afford the decency and respect of treating other people well and listening and making consent be important over your own desires? What is it that how much humanity can our choices afford? And part of that, what leads us to this, and this was a conversation we were having in the workshop, is like, the opportunity to see from different perspectives. And I tell people all the time that actually spoken word has taken me to so many different places I would have never imagined. And I've met so many people that I would have never imagined, And honestly, I politically am pretty lefty and stuff. But I remember once I was performing in East Texas. And I remember I was standing in front of this audience and I was looking at them and I realized, I was like, I have not written a single poem with any of the people in this audience in mind. And just because they're different from me, do I not care? Am I not interested in who they are? Am I not interested in their humanity? Do I not want to know what is going on with them? And so for me, when we really talk about like how much humanity can our choices afford, it's about taking this perspective shift and being able, I know I started off with self-centered as the kind of joking thing, but there's narcissism so much at the heart of all of these things. I'm the center, I'm the only thing that matters, and that happens in all kinds of ways, in all different kinds of communities, right? It's not just one group of people. So the next piece I'm gonna do for you is actually a nonfiction piece that I'm working on, and you're just going to hear the very early part of it. I know on the college campuses, a lot of different, across the country, there's been a lot of mobilization around Black Lives Matter. And last year, in the springtime, I was involved with a program that was called the Police Empathy Training Project in New York, where they paired artists with police officers to explore emotional intelligence training. During that time period that I was involved with that project, I was notified that someone that I had known was murdered by a police officer. And so at that same time where I was meeting and talking with these people, I was also going through my own personal grieving process around it. And it was kind of one of those things, and I'm sure you've experienced this at different points in your life, and you will continue to, that I'm like, okay, universe, you're putting all this stuff in front of me. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with this. And it goes back to something that my dad used to always say to me, who was a very like chill, super wise guy. He'd always say, you know, the trick is to have two things in your mind at the same time. And when he'd say that to me, I was like, yeah, sure, Dad, okay, whatever, you know? But now as I get older, I'm like, I understand what he's saying, because it's so hard to reconcile. It's so hard to reconcile, but you know that this is a reality, you know, as we were talking about the workshop today, you know, this is a reality for one person here, and this reality is also salient and real. So this is actually, you're just gonna get a little snippet of this piece. Again, I'm just kind of like starting to work on this nonfiction piece, but you'll just kind of get the very beginning part of it. So this piece, right now it's entitled, "He Wasn't Supposed to Be a Headline, He Was Supposed to Have a Life." The night of the rally for Eric Garner in Union Square, my boyfriend and I laid in bed holding each other. We couldn't quite explain why we both weren't out there. 10 years earlier, we would have undoubtedly been there with homemade signs, raging and angry. All I could point to was my irritation at people taking selfies at the Trayvon Martin rally 2 years earlier. I understood that the hoodies and profile pics were a form of solidarity online, but the narcissism of it all made me feel confused. My boyfriend shook his head and said, "I don't want to go somewhere where everyone else is mad just to make me more mad." He held me tighter as the tears came to both of our eyes. He remarked on our 21-year-old friend who was passionately out in the streets. He said, "I don't want her to have to be marching for the same things that we were marching for." My boyfriend and I couldn't have grown up any more differently. I was a Chinese Taiwanese American girl who grew up in a predominantly white suburb. He was a Puerto Rican and Mexican boy who grew up in the inner city of Chicago and didn't even see a white person until he was 11 years old. That's a true story. My only interaction with cops as a kid was when Officer Friendly came to school for the DARE program during Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. My boyfriend tells me that as a middle schooler, when he first started listening to California rap group NWA, he realized that the police brutality he saw in his neighborhood was happening to other people all across the country. Even now, in our neighborhood in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, he avoids wearing white t-shirts to not get hassled by the cops. In his work button-ups and slacks, he gets comments like, "Where's your skateboard?" and suggestions on hipster places to go to in Williamsburg. I had already been living in Bed-Stuy for over 4 years, and now it's been 12 years, when someone said to me as I got off the subway, "Welcome to the neighborhood." No matter my point of view or how long I've lived there, I will always be an outsider and a gentrifier. I've never been stopped by a police officer on the street in Brooklyn, ever. A few months after Eric Garner's murder, police officers Wenjin Liu and Rafael Ramos were murdered in their patrol car less than 10 blocks away from my apartment. Around the same time, police officer Peter Liang, who's Chinese, shot and killed Akai Gurley in the Pink Houses in East New York. The police force turned their backs on Mayor de Blasio. Those last few months of 2014, the whole city and my social media feeds were screaming with rage and anger. There is a police station at the end of my block. I've been there twice before to file reports. Once after a skinny older man threatened me with an unseen weapon and took my bag. The other time after a group of kids surrounded me and a friend, and a preteen boy dragged me by my hair onto the ground, bloodying my knees through my jeans. Both times I came away feeling that the cops were wildly unequipped to solve any crime whatsoever. The first time they showed me 5,000 mugshots of men who looked nothing like the guy who took my bag. The second time, they were ready to sweep the neighborhood and round up just any kids who were around. They seemed ready to arrest anybody, whether they fit the description or not. I wanted to understand more. when I received an email in early 2015 about the Police Empathy Training Project, a pilot project that paired performing artists with police officers, I jumped at the chance. The goal of the project was to increase the emotional intelligence of police officers through their work with creative artists. I emailed with the program director and arranged to meet up with them that following Saturday at John Jay College. When I entered John Jay, it was mostly empty. A security guard waved me through the turnstile, and I took the elevator to the 4th floor. In a fluorescent lit classroom, a dozen people chatted while munching on cold pizza and pretzels. The program director was running late. I shook hands with the NYPD lieutenant who was facilitating that day's session. He turned off the lights and started his slide presentation. He asked, "Do police officers get paid enough to put their lives on the line?" All of the students yelled, "No." He continued, "But they do. So the best way is to get them out of the situation." This lieutenant was a veteran of the NYPD hostage negotiation team and facilitated workshops on emotional intelligence for cops and cops in training across the police force. He was paired with the program director, who was a theater artist at the interest of a third-party donor. After one session, one of the John Jay students requested that they do a full 6-weekend program. The student recruited his friends who were studying to become cops or FBI agents. 3 active duty cops and 2 conflict mediators also joined the class. I was the only artist there that day to hear the lieutenant's presentation. He showed us video after video. A botched 911 suicide call. A homeless man gunned down by cops in a parking lot. A schizophrenic shot by the officer sent to save him. Eric Garner face down on the concrete. "What would you have done differently?" he asked the students. They each raised their hands. "I'd have backed up and given him more room. I'd have asked his family if he'd taken his meds. I'd have asked his mother if she could talk to him first. I'd say, we were here before, last week was on us, but this week you have to take the arrest. I'd have asked him what was wrong. Why did they use the police dog? There's no reason to go through a closed door. You talk to them through the door until they're ready to come out." So that's the end of this excerpt here. But yeah, I mean, and you know, as this piece will progress and as life progressed, that later on that night was when I had gotten the news about this person that I knew who had been murdered by a police officer, and it was a really intense experience, you know, obviously. And then to hear the different police officers and what they go through and their mental health challenges. One of the patrol cops, he described it to me like, imagine the worst 30 minutes you've ever had in your life. And imagine that you have that 5 times a day. And he said, and that's what it's like as a patrol cop. And he was saying for him personally that he felt that detectives, the trauma was less, not that it's not still traumatic for them, but that they absorbed less trauma due to the fact that they could at least see a case all the way through. Because he said for them, they always came to the scene when it was the most emergency situation, and then they never knew what happened, you know, afterwards. And I remember I was asking him, and also a police officer who was there, who was actually on an international exchange from China. I said, well, what do you do, you know, with all of this that you're taking in every day? And they both looked at me and they said, we drink, you know. They were like, yeah, you know, they had no other way to cope or see, you know, what was going on. These questions, you know, when we're talking about social change, when we're talking about governance, when we're talking about our communities, are complex. And I think when we think about how much humanity can our choices afford, for me, as difficult as that can be personally, it's important to listen to as many voices at the table as possible, because we need each other to make the solutions. Is everyone still with me? So in the spirit of that, I wasn't going to tell this story, and this isn't a poem, this is just a story, but last year I was doing an event over the Apollo Theater in Harlem that was bringing women from all over the world together who are different artists and different activists. I met this amazing prison abolitionist who's based in Australia. She has an organization that's called Sisters on the Inside, where they're dealing with women who are incarcerated. She told me this really moving story about how she had been incarcerated, and when she got out, she ended up going to law school and then wanted to advocate on behalf of women who were incarcerated. But she realized that in order to do that, she had to have her organization stand for all women who were incarcerated. And when she was in prison, her best friend was killed by a rival gang. And so before she started her organization, she sat down with the woman who had killed her best friend. And they went through a mediation process where they talked about what had happened, what had led to those circumstances and how they came to that place. And it came to a point that this woman who has started this organization actually became the one who petitioned for that woman's release. And I thought that was such an extraordinary story in terms of really understanding what it means to do the work and the very intense spiritual and emotional work that may have to happen to be able to stand inside the integrity that you want to have for your organization. Now, of course, everyone's going to make different choices in life, and you have to make the choices that are consistent with what's good for you and what works for you. But I just share that because that was something that was very impactful to me and really taught me to really think about compassion and its role in what we care about. Everyone still with me? Yes? Okay. So I'm going to change it up a little bit, if that's all right. Yeah? Is that all right? Okay. How are we doing on time? It's 7:31. There's so many things. Okay, so I'll do this one, we'll do that one, and then we'll do that one. Boom. And then we'll talk. We'll care and share. Questions and answers. We'll see who has the questions, and we'll see who has the answers. But this piece I dedicate to all of you. Somebody here already was telling me this school is all type A. Is this true? Everyone's like, yes, we are all type A personnel. Wow, just wow. That's intense, people. That's intense. So I had written this piece. I wrote this piece because I was talking with my friend Sarah, and she and I were talking. This was way back in the day when both of us were still single. We'd always be like, we're so fly. Why is everyone we date so whack? How is this happening? How do we don't really talk like that. We don't talk. Or do we? And then a couple years later, we both had found the love of our lives, and then we just, we're kind of more chill and all this kind of stuff. And so when I talked with Sarah, I thought it was really interesting. And she said to me, Kelly, she's like, in my 20s, I was most captivated by genius. But in my 30s, I realized how rare authentic kindness is. And I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful statement. So I wrote this piece for her and all of you. So this piece is called Kindness Over Genius. I've got to agree with Sarah. In my 20s, I thought genius was the hotness. Workaholic perfectionists who taught themselves to play 20 different instruments. A combination lawyer, ER doctor, and clinical social worker. A novelist who writes for 10 hours a day, goes to sleep for 2, gets up and writes for another 10. Now, genius bores me. The blistering erections of human achievement. All the while, the genius's life is crumbling around him or her. The phone goes silent, birthdays and holidays go missed, vacations never get taken. Genius doesn't have time for these kinds of frivolous things. I know because I have been a sufferer of genius. Not to say that I am one, but I've nearly destroyed myself in its pursuit, sacrificed so many nights not sleeping, exploded an atomic cloud of emotional distance around me, found my own energy and ingenuity outpacing me, running over me foot by foot. Genius doesn't have time for feelings or social skills or Farmville on Facebook or Guitar Hero marathons or bubble tea dates on rainy afternoons or knowing what one's loved one is crying about. When the crying eventually does come, genius is so often absent, swinging around in its own genius world, gorilla-knuckled with broad teeth and a thick skull, blowing through the jungle, not caring who he or she crushes. To live like this is not extraordinary. Not when compared to the open hand that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday stays here. No flinching, no quaking, no fists. Not extraordinary when compared to the open hand that stays here through blustery blizzards, balmy springs, scorching summers. Not extraordinary when compared to the open hand that stays here and isn't worried about whatever hand things it could be doing right at now, or what are all the other hands doing? Or is it really recognized and valued by the entire world in what it is as a hand? Not extraordinary when compared to the open hand that stays here and extend fingers and wrists rooted in the whole person, the one who's right here, right in front of me, not racing ahead to seek out the next innovation, the next solution, the next trend. Not extraordinary when compared to the open hand that stays here and remains unafraid to be kind in the midst of so much genius. Sorry, the Volunteer Illini Project's Urban Development Project. And what we did was connected students on campus to communities that were off campus. I went to school at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and so there was very like town and gown kind of thing, that was happening. So even though, at that time the university was putting $5 million into renovating the campus town, there were still communities in northern Champaign where the majority of the population was below the poverty line that didn't have street lamps, right? Like some basic public safety things that were not, like infrastructural projects, were not getting paid attention to. So again, I'm all in the spirit of let's bring everybody together. So this is a piece that I wrote for AmeriCorps alums' 20th anniversary, because it's been 20 years that I did AmeriCorps right after I graduated from college. So this piece is just called To Find Your Place in the World. Technical difficulties. Give it up for Brian, yay! Coming to the rescue! What am I doing wrong? We need to refresh. Okay. Let's see if that does it. Oh, here we go.
To find your place in the world, where your leverage can mean everything, where your courage can invite a child to read, a house to be built, a veteran to live more fully again. Grasp hands in this circle where no one knows what they can be. Not yet. You find out together. Planning nights at the school gym. Packing medical supplies at the clinic. Pulling out paper jammed in that printer. Driving that long stretch of road beyond the floodplain. Here, where value so often goes overlooked. In this place, in this community, in this person, you commit, and you may not even be sure why yet. You commit. A year. 2 years. 3 years. A lifetime. Add to the billion hours of work. The hundreds of thousands of hands who found value here, where it so often goes overlooked, where your leverage can mean everything.
Okay, so yeah, that was to find your place in the world. We'll just make that go away. So I will just do one more poem for you all, if that's all right. Yes. Okay. Thank you for being a wonderful crowd tonight. I'm excited to talk, care, and share. See your very intense questions. We'll see where it goes. This last piece I'm going to leave you with is a piece that I wrote just thinking about, when you think about human history, humans have been very, very creative about how to destroy each other all throughout human history. Like those medieval torture devices, it's like somebody's like, I'm gonna make a coffin, I'm gonna put nails in it, then we're gonna put a person in it, we're gonna take a person, we're gonna tie him to 4 different horses and set them. Like that is very creative, okay? And that creativity could be maybe well served in a different area, people. So this piece I've dedicated to the idea of what would be possible if we dedicated our human energy, initiative, power, and insight towards generativity and creation as opposed to destruction. So this piece is called Weapons of Mass Creation. What if we had weapons of mass creation nestled in secret safe houses and nooks and crannies across the globe? We could get some MIT scientists to tinker away on the sly, build us some chemical nuclear gadgets to indiscriminately birth, capacitate, heal, ignite life, teeming with one click of a red button. Juicy slugs sliding down stop signs, green velvety grass crushing through cracked concrete, loaves of braided bread materializing in mailboxes, a song bubbling in every throat, an absence filled in every hand, closed ballooning buttons popping, a woman swinging her full, beautiful hips, unafraid as the sweat rolls off her nose, weapons of mass creation to explode babies onto every street corner. Huge blinking eyes, curious chubby fingers, waves of baby fat toddling through open windows, gurgling us a new wisdom. Weapons of mass creation to pour foundations for schools, libraries, and clinics on lots that have been left vacant for years. To zap money from the coffers of war. Trade thousands of days of combat for 4 million new homes. or 7 million new teachers, or 200 million children's health insured weapons of mass creation to train ourselves to become champions of community and home. Learn yet how to stand and embrace the entire globe, to figure more fantastic ways to live instead of die, dissolving on contact the welling ache within each human heart, lifting each burden carried with both hands overhead to erase all shadows ever burned onto the ground, twist knots in every gun. Make each bullet birdseed. Let these flocks carry away our knives between their claws. Let them trap our screaming between their beaks, and as they fly, usher us into a new age of joy and laughter. Hair, skin, teeth, nails growing at a luscious, rapid pace, rippling across billions as we dig our toes deep into moist, crystal black, fertile soil. Thank you all so much. Yeah. Now is the time that we talk. And yeah, Michael and Sarah, correct? Are gonna do this talk show thing, I guess. Let's make it happen.
If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll come to you with the microphone.
Yeah. I see one in the back, like a hey.
So first of all, thank you for the great spoken word. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
So how does one get into spoken word?
Yes. How does one get into spoken word? Well, I mean, I got into spoken word, again, through this high school English teacher. You know what? It's very different today than when I started, quite honestly, because, you know, and I feel so, you know, it's interesting because you all in particular, right? Like how many of you remember a time before social media? Yes or no? Not really. It's a little vague. You know? There's kind of like a different time period where, you know, live performance, like people who were live performers met each other through live performance more, you know? Because I know for me personally, it was 2008 when people started telling me more they'd seen me on YouTube than they had seen me in real life, you know, or like on TV or whatever. And so I had started previous to that. So back in those times, you like hit a bunch of open mics and then you start touring and you start doing all the poetry slam sets. And, you know, at that time it was like, you know, I've performed before everything from like puppets to burlesque dancers, hip hop MCs, a president, a former president, you know, any kind of situation I've been in. So I think at that time when I had started, you know, it was kind of like a very organic in that way. I think when people are starting out in spoken word now, it's a very different thing since a lot of it's very oriented towards the college poetry slam circuit and the national poetry slam circuit. So people need to kind of, in general, I just have seen less poets come out not from those scenes, you know, now. So at this point in time, a lot of times people go through the college circuit and the National Poetry Slam and like, you know, and the YouTube. The YouTube is very important, you know, so, yeah. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi,
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about how when you talk to some adults, they say, I used to do this, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So, and you are right that we all are very high overachievers.
Yeah.
So if you know you don't want to do poetry or something creative in your adult life, but you don't want to lose it, how do you suggest balancing that?
I think that's a great question. I mean, some of it's, you know, like consuming it, you know, like, of course, I thought it was really interesting. A lawyer that I met, he really loves reading poetry. And honestly, I don't meet too many people who love to read poetry that aren't poets, you know? But what was very interesting to me was he said that he spends all day writing these 20-page briefs. And so he thought it was so fascinating, even from just like a technical perspective, like, wow, how do you put so much meaning in such a small amount of lines, you know? So I think reading, you know, and going to support, you know, the arts, but you can do anything from like taking a class to, you know, creating your own practice for yourself. So like when I say creating your own practice for yourself, it's kind of like Like, is there a particular creative thing that you like in particular? You like Poetry Slam? Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think it's just like, honestly, the whole Poetry Slam scene, the vast majority of the Poetry Slam scene are people who did not do spoken word full time or Poetry Slam full time. This one woman I know who's been like on the Poetry Slam scene forever, she's like a big time designer over like Ralph Lauren or something like that, like a textile designer, but you would never know because she just never talked about it. So it's kind of interesting, like in the Poetry Slam scene, there's actually a lot of people who have, you know, these kind of like alter ego life. You know, like we know everything about like their lives except for what they do all day, you know? So, I mean, you can be one of those people though, you know, just being in the scene and going to support, you know, and different artists and things like that, you know? But I think when you're saying like, how do you continue? I think it's, and this is a larger philosophical conversation around your relationship to time and whether, and how you feel like time is your time yours? And I think this is something that's probably a challenge for you all now, and it will continue to be a challenge. You know, just wait till like family stuff comes along, kids come along, then, you know, people start getting even more like, I have no time, like my time is not mine. So I guess what I would say, and this is not really a direct way to say this, but I hope that as you go forward in life to make like, you know, a half hour of your time every week is your time to do whatever. You know, like, don't tell me you don't have a half hour. Or like, if you don't have a half hour, 5 minutes, you know, of your week has to be your time. And I think, and I know some people have been talking about self-care earlier today, but it's like, you need it. You need it in order to be more productive. I mean, all this, and you all probably read this research too. I mean, I've read a lot of research where it talks about like actually maximum productivity is around 55 hours a week. And every 5 hours past that, it just like goes off a cliff. You know? And so they say like, actually, like if you're working, you know, I mean, tell people this in financial services, you know, but like, you know, the productivity research says that like, you know, over 70 hours a week, it's basically like redundant time because you're not really getting more done, you know? So but you all will face not only here, but also in your work lives, like the cultural idea of what people think it means to work, you know? So I know this is like not totally a direct way of talking about it, but I think it has to do with our relationship with time and whether you feel like your time and your life is yours. You know? Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
thank you so much. It was such an amazing performance.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, a lot of your poetry is politically charged, has to do with a lot of really big issues that are, in my opinion, like very difficult to break down. So I wanted to ask you, when do you know when a poem is finished? Because a lot of the things that you tackle are things that are constantly changing depending on where you are, depending on who you're with. So I wanted to know when, you know, how that thought process is like of being like, this is what I want to say and this is where I'm going to stop.
I love this because this is a question I used to always ask writers when I was like a college student of like, how would I know you were done? And now I understand that when I would ask that question, people would be like, you just know. Because it kind of is an instinctual thing, I think, that you develop after a while. Again, I was telling some other people here earlier that like my basic barometer when I'm writing is to think about, does this feel true to me? And that's not only like factually true, does this feel emotionally true? Is this language true to what I feel like about this situation or these people, you know? Am I representing this in the truest way possible? And that doesn't mean like data points, that means feeling, like is this the feeling? And I find that to be a more effective way to think about how to edit and how to write, because good is highly subjective and it changes a lot, you know? But true, it's like either it's true or it's not true, you know? So I think that it's the doneness is somewhere along there around the trueness, you know? Because I just kind of, you know, I think in addition to like all the work that you all are doing here, like this highly analytical brain work, there's kind of like all this other weird, you know, for me artistically, there's this whole other weird brain that's a non-brain brain, you know? And you gotta let the non-brain brain tell you things. Who knows what it'll tell you, you know, but I have to trust it. And you know what's interesting is also, because I grew up in spoken word, is I really have found that performance is a part of my editing process. So a lot of times I don't know if a poem's done until I've performed it a couple of times. And even if I have a poem that I've been performing for years, sometimes I'll look at the original paper and I'm like, whoa, this is totally different than what I performed, because my mouth and my body was like, oh no, we don't need that line, you know? And so at this point, it's like my body and my ear and my mouth, they're my editors too. So I listen to them, you know? Yeah. Sure. All right. Anything else? Burning questions, okay.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to know, what do you want people to take from your poems? What is like an overarching idea that you want them to take when they hear your poems?
I don't think I have like one idea that I want people to take from a poem. What I do hope, I remember very early on when I started in poetry, my goal was always to put a question into people's minds. That's really what I would work from. A lot of times now, like a lot of the pieces I shared with you tonight, I was just thinking about the conversation I was having with people today, and I was kind of thinking about like an emotional and an intellectual journey that I thought would be interesting as a part of that, a lot of the conversations I've had with people today. But I guess like the one larger thing, you know, kind of like I was talking about earlier, is for me, poetry and the act of writing and performing and being able to meet so many people through my art form has been the act of just being able to learn about different people, you know? And I think it's fun. I think it's fun to learn about different people. And sometimes when people are very afraid of other people, I'm kind of like, you know, but the thing is, you know, aside from this kind of like, you should be more open to people, you know, like, you shouldn't discriminate. It's kind of like, you know, you're missing out on a lot of fun here also, you know, because people are fascinating. And every single person in this room, I know, like, if we sat down and shined a light on any single person in this room, we could be brought to tears. We could be inspired beyond belief. That person could be our hero, because we each are that, you know, and we just don't have a lot of opportunities to share that.
More question.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So you have like an amazing stage presence and like
Thank you.
confidence about you.
Why, thank you.
I'm just wondering, like, because it's so hard in the creative field to like get up on stage and like show that. If you ever had like moments where you're like, oh shoot, like I can't do this, or like, you know, kind of like those moments, and like how did you move past those?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. It happens at different times, and it's interesting because, you know, and I always tell people, like, you know, when you're on stage, it's like people don't understand what their resting audience face is, you know, because people will think that they're engaged, but their resting audience face is like. And, you know, like, for example, my boyfriend is like, he makes fun of me because he says I'm like the most active audience member ever, that I'm like clapping, I'm cheering, I'm smiling, you know, and I was like, I know what it's like up there, okay? And he's like the opposite, because I remember we went to this one show and he's very like, no expression. And I was like, how was it? And he goes, probably one of the best shows I've seen in my life. And I was like, you're horrible. I'm like, I would be dying up there, you know, as a performer. So you have to, like, I think part of maybe some of the stage fright, you know, and the presence is like, you see everyone, and for me, I like to stay very connected, you know, to my audience, but you also have to understand that, like, people might be that, but they might be having like a very like intense transformative moment. Like, you don't, or they might be thinking about their groceries, you know, but the thing is, it looks the same, you know? So, you know, so then you kind of realize that. But, you know, something I found myself saying to people a lot, like after a while of performing, is like, you know, sometimes when you're scared to perform, or you're scared to share, I tell people, you know, sometimes you gotta get over yourself, okay? Because for a minute, let's make it not about you and all your fears and stuff. Somebody in that audience might really need to hear what you had to say. And a lot of times you don't know who that person is, and you don't know what part of what you said is going to really reach them in a way that they really need it, you know? So I hope that maybe you can take that to encourage you, you know, to take the risk, you know, because and they may never tell you. That's the wonderful ephemeral thing about it. I know we're very in a time of like likes and metrics and numbers and all this stuff, but you know, the real gift I think of being an artist is you get the chance to go into a lot of weird unknown places, and you get to let that go out into a lot of unknown places, and that's the gift. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you all so much. I'll be hanging around if you want to connect with me. And of course, my website is kellytsai.com. I am on the YouTube. I am on the Twitters. I am on the Instagram. So my Twitter and Instagram handle is @kellytsai_NYC. But yeah, come and chat with me, and thank you all so much.